Uh, I'm so glad everyone's here to join us. Thank you for coming. I'm Allison Manley, the Director of Marketing here at Canopy Studios. And today's webinar with Kim Lai is about how your site's user experience impacts the perception of your brand. Canopy designs, builds, and supports websites for clients that want to make a positive impact. And a little bit about Kim. She is one of our amazing user experience strategists and designers. She helps clients bring their missions and goals to life online. She spends all the time she needs to understand what makes an organization unique, then creates design solutions that embodies all those qualities, helping clients tell their stories effectively, build trust with their audience, and motivate actions. I'm sure everyone here is very familiar with Zoom these days in the times of quarantine. So just remember that down in your controls, there is a Q&A button there. Please, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, you can enter it there in the Q&A portion. And when she's done, we'll address all the questions at once. And from here, I'm going to turn it over to Kim.
Thank you, Allison. So I was just introduced. My name's Kim. I live in San Francisco, and I've been working in user experience and visual design for the past 6-ish or so years. I got my start really working with nonprofit organizations. So that kind of jump-started my career in user experience, was designing for mission-driven clients and really understanding what their audience specifically needed and the kinds of stories they wanted to tell. So I really kind of vision myself as a storyteller online. But today what we're going to talk about is user experience and really how that impacts a person's perception of who you are and whether or not they should trust you. And the start really of that is really understanding what user experience is. When we talk about user experience, it really is how someone's feeling as they're interacting with your website, with your mobile application itself. It's a combination of what that individual needs, so what they came to your website to do, what you would like them to do ultimately, and a lot of these goals typically are signing up for a newsletter, donating, potentially purchasing something, and then site best practices. So we always want to make sure that we are addressing audience and business goals with the best practices of the internet. What we're not talking about is visual design. We're not talking about color choices. We're not talking about imagery. We're not talking about font choices. So any of those really beautiful choices that you'd make to enhance your brand voice, the tone, the visual language of your design, we're not talking about any of that. What we're really talking about, what user experience really aims to do, is answer 4 essential questions. The first one is, can I find it? Can your audience find the information they need quickly and easily, either via your navigation or via the content on the page? Do they understand that content once they get there? Is it written in a way that is simple enough for anyone to understand? Can they also be understood by audiences who potentially have visual impairments? Can they use screen readers, for instance? Is the contrast of the color of the font high enough that if someone, say, was colorblind, can they still read the content on your site? The third one is, can I use it? Now that I've found the information, I've read it and understood it, do I understand what to do next? Is there an action? Do I understand how to find it? Do I understand what I need to do in order to fulfill that particular action? And the last one is, do I feel satisfied? Once I've completed what I've come to your site to do I feel fulfilled? Was it a bad experience? Did I get caught up anywhere? These are the kinds of questions that we're asking ourselves. So thinking about those 4 questions, you wonder how and when does this affect someone's perception of a brand? And I think it's fairly common nowadays that people have a high expectation of websites, especially now in the time of COVID where everyone is going online. It's more imperative that the experience of your site be simple enough for someone to quickly do the thing that they need to do, but also be delightful enough that they want to stay and come back over and over again. So let's look at what some of the research is sort of telling us about user experience and its impact. Kind of the three barometers of which I gauge someone's delightfulness of a site is performance, how quickly a page loads, is it optimized for mobile, which is extremely important now. Can I find the information well? Is it organized in a way that I can use the menu system to find the exact category of information I'm looking for because I have a specific interest or need? And the communication style. What mechanisms are you using to communicate your message? It may not be in text. The majority, I think it's 73% of people scan websites. They're not necessarily reading all of the text that you have. So there are other ways in which we can communicate our message. It could be through imagery. It could be through video. It could be through moving GIFs. There's a lot of different ways in which you can communicate your message, not only through writing. But performance is kind of the biggest way, is the first gate really into your site, because it's the first thing people will notice about your site, whether or not the page loads quickly. The research tells us over and over again that if your page doesn't load in 3 seconds or under, more likely than not, people will leave your site. 40% of people potentially will leave your site without ever reading a single word if your page loads in over 3 seconds, which is a huge number. And another kind of larger statistic that we know is that if your site isn't optimized for a mobile experience, if the text is too small, if the arrangement of the layout isn't conducive to a smaller single long screen size, people are also more likely to abandon your site. So just looking at these two metrics, performance really is the first thing that people will notice about your site when they put your URL into their browser window. The good thing is that with a investment in just thinking about performance, just thinking about the structure, especially on a mobile experience, you're more than likely, once you invest in this, to see a much higher engagement rate, a much higher overall return, just by investing in the user experience of your site. And again, we're not talking about the visual design, the images that you'll have to take, the colors that you'll utilize. We're just talking about layout, structure, and performance. And if you have a really good mobile experience, that really is, it's something that will bring people back to your site more often than not, because a lot of people are looking are browsing the internet on their phones. I think it's about 65% nowadays of people who use the internet are using it on their smartphones. And not just people, Google search engines, Yahoo search engines will also respond positively if you have a good structured mobile experience. So you'll see an increase in traffic through these search engines with your website being higher on the results list if you have a good mobile experience. Google nowadays really pays attention to how optimized, how fast your mobile experience is when they are rating your website against all of your competitor websites. Mobile is important. I think you've gotten the gist of the performance. Mobile is really where the internet is moving now. A lot of people expect websites to have really good mobile experiences as well as desktop experiences, because they probably will look at the mobile version of your site at least once in their interaction with you and your organization. Over 60% of users say that they do not or will not trust a company if it hasn't been optimized for mobile, because that says to an individual, you're not necessarily invested in this particular experience. How can I trust you if you don't really have a good website? A website nowadays is really becoming a barometer for trust and building that trust with your audience. Information flow. So for a lot of the sites that I see, information flow is one of the top issues for a lot of organizations, because they don't have a menu system that is structured in a way that allows people to find information easily. What we have found with a lot of our clients is that many of them are using Google search in order to find information on their site. Not a great idea. It would be really great if people were on your site themselves and able to browse content. And the research kind of shows us this. So if you're looking for a boost in the positive reactions to your brand just through your site, organizing information in an easy way that people can go through your navigation and find the piece of content that they need will boost someone's perception of your brand and their warm-heartedness towards your brand by twofold. Really, it will impact someone's fondness towards your organization more than the visual design will, by double, really. So 400%, you'll see a higher conversion rate if you're focusing on a better user experience, but you'll only see a 200% higher conversion rate if you're only focusing on the visual design aspect. So really, you'll see much better returns if you are focused more on the user experience of your site. Because attention is short, we're not the only ones on the internet. There are a lot of different sites competing for the same pool of people, of attention. And if someone can't find something on your site, they will probably leave. The research shows us that almost 80% of people who cannot find something on a site will just leave. And once they leave, it's really hard to get them back. So we really want to make the experience as easy, and to make that mental load, the ability for someone to use your site without having to overload their own brain, make that really low so that they feel like, wow, this organization gets me, they know what I need, they're able to serve it up for me in a way that I understand. How great is that? These guys really understand me. And then the last thing really is content. We want to make content easy. We want to write in simple terms. We want to appeal to the largest, broadest audience possible. Because if things aren't, if our values, if our mission, if what we're trying to tell the world really isn't something that I understand as an individual, that doesn't necessarily align with me, I may not understand who you are. That'll create confusion. That will cause me to leave. So being really clear about who you are, what you stand for, the whys behind why you really are about this particular mission or about this particular goal set will really go a long way in building trust with your audience and really building that rapport. If you think about how people potentially come to your website, it's not always through the homepage. I mean, majority of the time it is. I think in the sites that we've seen, at least 50 to 60% of people come through your homepage first. And that is their front door handshake, if you will. But it's their first impression of you, is that homepage. What is that homepage saying? How does that homepage look? But it's not the only way that people are finding you. And it's not the first interaction they may have with you. Actually, a lot of people come to websites through blogs, through news articles, through specific pieces of information that they're searching for online. Your site may pop up because they are seen as a thought leader, as an expert in this particular field. So they might come to your website through these nuggets of knowledge. And we're really kind of seeing that through the research. Ads are great, but people find them extremely annoying. So when you as an organization come up in someone's regular day-to-day searching because they need additional information, that's really where you have the power to convert someone, to introduce them to your brand, to show them what you're about, and really kind of bring them into your fold. And then visual design. When we think about visual design, and I was talking about this earlier, it's not always through words. Words are great. Headers are great. Really short, snappy headers can be really powerful at converting someone, but it's not the only way we process information, especially for people who maybe English is a second language, or maybe they don't have a high enough reading level. Making sure that you have images, videos to pair with whatever you're writing is a really powerful tool in your toolkit, because that means you're able to showcase your message to a wider range of audience without having to rely on words. And again, seeing this in the research, 73% of people are persuaded to buy products through videos because they're able to see and understand how that product works before they actually purchase it. It's paramount. Content really is paramount. Language is really important through a site. It really sets the tone of how someone might interact with you on a longer term. You may or may not, as a user of the website, talk to someone at a company. Who you're talking to is the website. So websites with really fun personalities really can get a lot of attention. They really feel approachable. They feel friendly. They can really change the way someone perceives a brand just by the way that they are really talking to someone. And if you're writing for people on your site, you're writing for me who's interacting with your site, but search engines will also recognize that. So writing for people really will help boost that search engine optimization, putting your website higher on those search results lists, because it's seeing how you're interacting, how you're writing, what kinds of keywords you're using, and they're able to elevate you higher in the search term list. So two wins right there. So now that we kind of know performance, information flow, content, how do you really go about starting to figure out what you really need to do? How do you want to be saying things? How do you want to structure things? And we at Canopy kind of take a two-pronged approach. The first thing is research. Research really is extremely helpful for us to narrow down our focus to what your users actually need. And we do two things. We gather quantitative data. We love Google Analytics. We're always looking at Google Analytics to understand what are your popular pages? What's the bounce rate for those pages? How many people visit your site on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis? Do you see spikes at specific months of the year? Other things, where are they coming from? Are they coming to your site because they searched something in Google search? Are they coming from Facebook? Are they coming from another site? All of these questions you can really answer through Google Analytics. We also use Hotjar, which is a really great tool to understand how people are interacting with specific pages. It tracks clicks, it tracks how far someone scrolls down a page, and for desktop, it tracks where the mouse is moving. So we're really able to understand where are the hotspots, what are people most interested on this page. Pool and the redder kind of areas, the more red the spot is, that means my internet, let me know if I pop out, my internet is unstable. The redder it is, the hotter the button is, or the hotter the link is. I also like to use a tool called the conversion funnel. And I use this specifically to track if we assume someone will convert after they view 1 or 2 pages, how accurate is that assumption? And we're just testing and verifying that assumption for us. We also do quantitative testing. And a lot of this is really having a conversation with your end users. And it's the most valuable tool in your toolbox is to talk to these people, to understand really what is their mindset as they're going through your site. So understanding things like, how are people finding you? What's the first page someone lands on? How did they feel about that page? Did they find the content that they needed? Do they wish there was something else represented on your site? Is there a feature? Is there a specific information they couldn't find that they wish they could find on your site? All of these are really great questions to talk about with your actual end users. And once we sort of gather all of this, one of the things that you can start forming is this idea of how your brand is really being perceived by these individuals, right? You know, do they find you easy? Do they find you friendly? Do they find things really difficult on your site? Do they think that the content's a bit convoluted? All these questions that you can really kind of suss out. And we do these in a couple of ways. We do on-site surveys. On-site surveys are really great for really short, in-the-moment questions. So we try to capture someone after they've experienced your site, so after they've done what they need to do. And we ask them kind of 3 questions. Why were you here? Did you accomplish what you needed? If not, why not? And that's it. We try to keep it really short and sweet because we want to keep it task-based and to really understand if we're actually meeting people's needs. We use Google survey for a longer form survey. What's your age? What's your gender? Would you recommend our organization to your friends or family? What adjectives would you use to describe this organization? This is where we can really take a moment and really kind of dive deep into those longer form questions that we're really interested in knowing. And then we apply learning. So the biggest thing you can probably do, and probably the easiest thing you can do right now, is to size your images appropriately. The biggest offender of site performance and why your pages might be loading over 3 seconds is gigantic images. So make sure that your images aren't just gigantic for the sake of being large. We definitely want clear, beautiful images, but they should be sized appropriately. So the rule of thumb really for Retina screens is for images to be 2 times larger than you need it for the Retina screens to have the images be clear on Retina screens. The second really is a streamlined structure. This is going to come out of a lot of that quantitative testing. How do we want to structure the menu? What things we need on the top line navigation? What things do we need in the footer? And you really want to start thinking about what pages are the most popular among your audience. And then also pair it with, okay, now that we understand what users need, what does our organization also want to put at the forefront? Are there specific pages that are buried that you wish people were looking at? And have those discussions, and then reorganize your navigation to both serve audience needs and also serve your business goals. Optimizing page layouts. A lot of pages come to us as walls of text, and we have a lot to say. There's a lot of great information there, but you need to figure out ways that you can chunk information so that it's easier for someone to scan the page, because 73% of people are going to look at that wall of text and feel overwhelmed, and they might leave. So if we are able to use headers, specifically, a really great tool to just create sections of information so someone can quickly scroll up and down the page, get at a quick glance, understand what the information is about, and then dive down deeper if they want to. Editing your content. Sometimes you need to say a lot in order to get the information across, and sometimes we're just repeating ourselves. So figure out ways and moments where you can edit yourself down. We want to try and get to the most salient points, again, because a lot of people really aren't going to read everything that's on the page. So it's great if there are ways you can just take a look at your content and be like, actually, either this isn't really important anymore, this is outdated. We already are saying this somewhere else. And if you can just truncate a bit of the content, it will make for a much easier time for someone going through your content to understand who you are and really get a sense of who you and your brand are. And relatable language. So your site potentially is the first impression someone will receive about you and your organization. So we want to use language that is simple, that feels approachable, that feels familiar, because writing for humans is great for me because I get to understand you and your organization better, but it's also great for search engine optimization. Google will recognize that you are writing for humans and therefore will elevate your site more in search listings because of that. Okay, I think try to get through that as quickly as possible. We have about 5 minutes left, I believe, for questions.
Yeah, and there are two questions that have been submitted, but you did cut out, unfortunately, when you were talking about personas. So can you just run through that real quick?
Sure. So something that's really great about the qualitative research is we start defining our user personas, who our actual target audience is. And it really is extremely important to prioritize those. Everyone wants to create a site for everyone, and that's great. But what that ultimately does is it muddies the waters a bit for what the actual who the actual audience really is for your site and what they actually need to do on your site. So it's a hard conversation to have, but if you are able to number your target audiences from 1 to 3 or 1 to 5, however many audiences you have, it will really help you in the long run as you're making decisions about what your menu structure should look like, what your homepage structure should look like, because you're really fine tuning content to one specific audience first, and then the others follow.
Okay, great. And then we have a couple questions. We'll see how many we can get through. What are a few visitor experience barometers and key metrics that are unique to a college website?
Ooh. Unique to a college website. Okay. I mean, so college websites have they definitely want people to fill out forms for applying, right? That definitely is something that you want people to do. I would say that scheduling visits, potentially even downloading like PDF packages about the school, is something that's unique. You don't really see people downloading PDFs from websites anymore. So that probably is something that would be really interesting if you have printed brochures, which I'm sure a lot of, at least when I was in college, I printed out a brochure at my college. Printing out PDFs, I feel like, is something that's specific to colleges and or research sites. Organizations that actually have printed materials almost always having them available on their websites.
And of course, making those PDFs accessible PDFs, right?
Yes.
100%. Another question for quantitative questions. How often do you suggest doing that, or is that a one-time thing?
Ooh, great question.
I don't know if you can see the Q&A, so you can read those as well.
Oh, I cannot,
Okay.
But that's a great question. So I would say you should revisit your Google Analytics or do heat mapping every 3 months. And that might be too long. If you're doing like a specific fix, like let's say you reorganized your homepage because you have an event coming up, or Giving Tuesday was happening, and so you tailored all your content to Giving Tuesday. You really want to test that immediately once it's up. But I would say if you're not really making that many changes to your site, I would check in once every 3 months, once a quarter, to see how things are going. Has anything changed from one quarter to the next? Has anything gone down? Has anything gone up? It'll just give you a nice, it's a great check-in to yourself and how your website's doing.
And how do you determine who you will ask?
Who I will ask
for
qualitative questions to?
The quantitative questions when you're doing them every 3 months.
Ooh, who you'd ask to do that? Mm-hmm. You don't really necessarily need to talk to people for the quantitative. I would say Hotjar and Google Analytics are probably really are enough, and you don't necessarily need customer interaction for that. If you do the click tracking, if you do Hotjar also has a really great tool. It records people's sessions. It doesn't record them. It just records what they do on your site as they visit it. And if you do that, you'll get a really good sense of how people are browsing your site and how they're utilizing specific features.
Okay, great. Well, I know we are out of time, but thank you everyone so much for coming. We really appreciate it. We will be sending out the recording of this. Plus there's a list of resources at the back of the deck. If you want to just scroll to that real quick, Kim, and that will be coming out as well. And with the follow-up email following this. So thank you everyone for coming. Have a great rest of your week. Bye.
Bye.